Hello and welcome to the Empowered Lifestyles Podcast, a movement and community designed to help you live your best life and reconnect you back to the things that really matter. In today's episode, Anne and I jump in on a really important conversation when it comes to navigating screens as a parent. When you look at the way that kids are exposed to screen time, social media, all of these external influences, it's not going anywhere. So there's some really key, important conversations that you need to have with your children right now, be it young, be it a teenager, so that you can set some really healthy boundaries around screens and also talk about some of the potential challenges that they could face when it comes to being on screens as they navigate growing up in a very, very different world to how we did. So let's jump into the conversation.
Hey, it's Ed and Kate here, bringing to you today 5 conversations to have with your kids right now about screens. So when you look at your screen usage of your children, for the vast majority of people, it's the majority of their waking hours, whether that is at school, where it's largely on screens, whether it's at home. And we like to talk about screens are a lot like fire. They can be your best friend or your worst enemy. With fire, it can create warmth, it can create energy, it can create light. But also, if you don't know how to use it, it can burn the whole place down. And that's very relevant to screens.
Absolutely.
Screens inherently aren't good or bad. It's how we use them.
And I think, in our children's age they're living in, and I had this chat with our kids just this week, when we were growing up, we didn't have the distraction or the technology in our hands. If we wanted to speak to a friend, we would dial a phone. If we wanted to catch up, we would go to a park, we would go places, or we'd just play in the backyard with our brother or sister. So it's teaching our kids, like, we can't avoid technology. It's not going anywhere. It's only going to influence our life even further. So it's knowing how to work with it and setting up really healthy boundaries around it so that it's conversations that you can proactively have with your children, not coming in and telling them what they have to do, because often if you look in the mirror at yourself, it can be easy to get caught up on the screen yourself.
Get off your phone, get off your screen.
Yeah, go outside and play and you're sitting on your phone. So, it's important to distinguish different uses and the reasons of why that, we use screens. And it's about starting this conversation with your children rather than just coming in and telling. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, and so it's always great to start, well, what's the upside? What's the benefit here? And so we call it the 4 C's, or the benefits of having the screen. And the first one, as Kate already alluded to, is having connection. We live in a society where, I know when I grew up, we lived and we all caught the bus home together and we're all in the same cul-de-sac, and so it was touch footy, it was cricket, but you were with people. Now, kids tend to go home to their room or even if they're on the bus, they're on their screen. And so it's about having connection. So kids are in chat groups, they're in different threads, whether it's on Messenger or Snap, whatever it might be. But also a lot of the reason that your kids are gaming, it's for the connection, all right? The other C that alludes to gaming is the challenge. Kids love to be challenged and love to be fulfilled. And that dopamine hit they get from hitting another level, being upgraded to another thing, getting another skin, it's super powerful.
Hitting a PB, being competitive against friends, all of those things, it brings a digital experience for them to have that as well.
Yeah, the other C is creation. And so our daughter, she loves art. And so she'll go on to certain Instagram pages where she follows and she'll learn how to draw. It's very add value. And so people have that inspiration through creating certain things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the 4th C is making coin. Let me share about our eldest.
Sure. So we had this conversation with our kids, like, if you're going to be spending time on screens, let's make it worthwhile. And so he's actually now just set up an eBay dropshipping business. And so he comes in and tells us, I made another sale. And he was out with his friends rock climbing on the weekend and he had 14 sales come through. And so he's learning how to use this technology as his friend to create an income stream that isn't necessarily dependent of his time or location, which is really incredible. So there's huge plus side. The reason we're able to sit here right now with you is because of the online space and technology, which is amazing.
So very wise thing to do is have this conversation with your children.
Yeah.
What are the benefits?
Yeah.
And instead of telling them, ask them questions. If you draw out, if you elicit from your children, now it's their idea and you're just there to put guidelines around their ideas.
Yeah.
If you're barking at them, telling them what to do, think about when you grow up, it never worked. And so if you draw out and then kind of use those 4 C's as a framework to say, here's some incredible benefits. And instead of being judgmental about what they're doing, become curious. I used to have this thing, the kids would be there and they would be watching people on YouTube play a game. And it would just blow my mind. What on earth are you doing? And then I got curious and went, I wonder why they're interested in that. And I sat down and it was educational. Okay, they would teach him something. It was very entertaining as well. And so if you're curious and then you can go, okay, these are the needs that my children are trying to meet through that. Then we want to start to look at, well, what are the drawbacks? What are the downsides of this thing called technology or screens? And the first thing is if you observe your children or even yourself, if you have a brief moment or a lapse where you're not doing anything, it's so easy to grab your phone and just check a message.
Yeah.
To check this, to check that. And there's a saying, boredom breeds creativity. Boredom breeds creativity. It's those white spaces where we think and we come up with ideas and we vision and we imagine. If we're continually bombarded with stimulus, then we kind of go into a bit of a zombie mode.
Yeah. And we know that when we're active, it gives us energy. We feel alive. And so when we're sitting down in front of a screen, we're sedentary and we look at the health statistics, of what's going on, not only just in our children, but in adults, of not enough physical activity, too much just sitting in one spot. It's affecting our metabolism, our energy, our overall health and well-being. And we're seeing all sorts of health conditions do this on the rise, and so much of it comes back to our lifestyle or a lack of movement in our lifestyle as well.
Yeah, 1 in 3 children are overweight or obese, and that's projected to be 1 in 2 in the coming years.
Yeah.
So the other thing is the dopamine hit. You have well-paid, a whole kind of board of incredibly smart people who design the algorithms to keep us engaged on screens.
Yeah.
And they are very clever at giving us that dopamine hit. It's the like, it's the comment, it's the pop-up of video that they just know at that time of day is going to keep us watching another 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so having your children be aware that it is like a drug. And we're going to give you solutions to all of these in just a second.
Yeah.
But the other thing is the time of day that children are on screens.
Well, our sleep cycle is so important. And for children, for them to get proper, adequate rest where their beautiful bodies are healing and regulating and growing through the night, if they're missing out on that REM sleep, of that really important sleep, and particularly not having light in their room, having a nice dark room, that will affect the hormone release through the night. It will affect their immune system. It will affect their energy levels and their growth. And so, if there's screens on, there's phones under pillows, there's late nights where their body isn't getting to sleep, before 8:30, 9 o'clock. I know sometimes if you've got teens, it's going to be pushing out a little later, but that will absolutely affect their overall sense of energy, well-being, and, their quality of sleep and their growth.
Yeah, as well as the electromagnetic frequencies that are involved with that. The number of kids who sleep with their phone near their head
under their pillow,
and what that's causing as far as brain activity, potential cause of certain things going on in there is really challenging.
Yeah.
The other thing we wanted to cover is certain topics you can't just push under the rug and hope it won't happen to your child.
Yeah.
It's not a wise approach. And these things are only weird if you make them weird. You ever notice that? It's how you feel about a conversation as you bring it up. But if you're confident and you're just allowing your children, it's just another perspective of life. And that's this topic of what's called sextortion, where, certain people, certain scams are getting images from a child's platform, whether it be a TikTok or Snap or any of those, getting their faces, but then putting other images that are quite revealing and defaming and could be easily misconstrued that is the person who did that. And then threatening to send that out to all of the contacts of that child and then demanding money. And then kids are put in a situation, if they haven't had this conversation about what to do in that situation, or just to never send images or take particular images they wouldn't want the whole world to see, is resulting in some really sad stories.
It is. So we brought this topic up with our kids on multiple occasions, but it's just kind of come back up again recently, and just sitting down and saying, look, I know you're not going to go and send photos to your friends and things, but I just in case you have a friend. So rather than going in accusingly, because you don't want to do that, but to say, if you ever had a girlfriend that a boy asked her to send a photo and she was thinking of doing it, do not let her do that. Anything that is sent on a phone can be screenshot, shared, and the next thing you go to school and everyone's talking about you, and it's one little moment. And so, it's not, and I said this to the kids, it's not even just kids and teens getting caught up in this. Some well-meaning adults are thinking they've found love on the internet, and all of a sudden they're transferring money and they're losing thousands and thousands of dollars. So it's not just a kid thing, but bringing it back to stories to say, look, there's been some children recently where they've sent a photo or someone has contacted them, a stranger has contacted them. They did not know who they were, and then they started, requesting money or different things. Bring this up. We certainly don't do it to have our children living in fear, but we do it to have a conversation with them so that if something ever arose with a friend, that they ever got stuck in a situation, that they would never feel scared to come to mum or dad and say, hey, I need help. The way I like to think about it is, imagine you sit down with your family, and we literally did this, and we said, what if there was a fire in our house right now and you were upstairs in your bedroom and we were downstairs? What would you do if we had never spoken about a plan before, but what would you do? And they said, they all said the thing that I wanted them to say, which was really good, but they all were like, well, we'd go out over to this landing, which is over near the pool, and if we had to, we could jump off the landing into the swimming pool. And I was like, that's amazing. And so we had this family discussion about, if there's a fire, what would we do? And we all had this really, really clear conversation. And then what was great is we could park that because we knew what we would do if it ever arose. And so the same with this kind of social media thing. If your children do have a social media account, if they have access to their phone, to be able to say, hey, I love you. And I know you're not going to go sending photos to random people. But if you ever have a friend that did, if you ever have someone reach out to you that you don't know, here's what you want to do. Because then you've had the conversation. It's not a one-time thing. It's repetitive, right? But then you can know that you've at least set a foundation of that conversation with your kids, so that as they get older and, different relationships and things happen, you can, really make sure that they feel safe and that you have had that conversation with them.
Absolutely. So when you bring all of this to the table, then you can put together what we call a family agreement. And so the whole world works in contract law. And again, if you want to set your children up for the future to thrive, they understand how the world works, and you start playing by those rules to raise them. You're setting them up not to just survive, but to thrive into the future. So you want to create a situation where they are living by design. Okay, they're being deliberate in what they do rather than knee-jerk reaction, which is default. And so that's why we wrote the book, Creating Conscious Kids, helping your children find their happy place in this age of distraction. And so we cover it in that book, but what we want to go through here is how to create a family agreement. And we already covered some of the points. You want to bring all of the topics as an open conversation. It's not mum and dad sitting at the head of the table dictating what we're doing.
Yeah.
What do you think about this? What about that? Oh, I love that idea. Have you thought about this? Maybe even have someone taking it down, but then going, okay, well, what could we bring together as the solution for this?
Even asking, what do you notice that mum and dad do on their phones that aren't so great that we maybe need a reminder about, because they love being able to, give you a little bit of advice as well. So, so sitting down and saying, okay, what would be some great rules that if we were to put in place as a family that would allow us to have more connection, more quality time, less screen time, or when we were on our screens, that it was actually meaningful and not mindless?
Yeah. And so one that you want to make sure arrives or you suggest is where and when and how we get to use these things called screens. And not having it in the bedroom would be a great one. Having the potential to earn screen time by adding value either to the world or to your family. So you get to earn the right because it's a privilege to be able to have the screen. And it could be something like, well, I'm going to read for an hour and I get an hour of screen time on the weekend to game with my friends. And then they're learning about having the ability to be responsible and accountable. And if you want to receive value, you've got to add value.
Yeah.
The other thing is if they jump on a screen and you've identified that the outcome for that, and so the thing you might have is as a family agreement, we don't just pick up a screen for no reason.
Yeah.
We think about, why am I doing this? Well, it's just entertainment. I just want to blob, all right?
And we all have those moments, right?
Yeah, I just want to switch off. Great. You know how good the people are who put the algorithms together. Let's set an alarm because you're going to do 30 minutes.
Yep.
That's what we've agreed upon. When that alarm goes off, we put that down. So knowing the outcomes.
Yeah. And then, thinking about, okay, so if they are earning their screen time, that there are alarms in place so that they're not getting caught up and distracted, and that there is a plan for them to be able to, okay, so for our kids, we homeschool. So a lot of their friends I don't get to chat to through the day that go to school. So we know that they want to have some connection time with their friends towards the end of the day. That's fine. But we have parameters around that so that they know, right, phone down, it's family time now, it's meal time or whatever needs to happen. And then they get their connection time with their friends a little bit later.
Amazing. So we trust that this has caused some conversation, some thought, and you have the ability to go connect with your children and arrive at a place where you have these agreements. Does that mean from today that agreement is set in stone and they'll never go against it? Absolutely not. It's about having that continual reinforcement. And that's where you want to have a sacred time each day where you get to sit down and you have these conversations.
Yeah, amazing.
And it's all too common that people are just grabbing a meal, scoffing down, phones there, screens on. So the other thing that we want to add here as the finale is making sure you have a sacred meal every day. For us, evenings can be hectic. That child's gone to taekwondo, that one's at soccer, that one's at circus school. So we know on that day, breakfast is the meal. Other days we do get to do the other evenings. Sometimes, as Kate said, we homeschool, so we do it at a lunchtime. But that is where you want to have some kind of set of questions like, what are you grateful for? What are you learning today? What are you excited by? What's been challenging for you? What's on your mind? What are some of the struggles your friends are dealing with? Okay?
Yeah.
So stay empowered. Be conscious, be deliberate in your parenting.
Absolutely. And if you haven't yet got a copy of our book, you can go to consciouskidsbook.com and get that in your hands. You can also get an audio version of it as well. So we hope that has sparked some conversation for yourself, your partner, and your children when it comes to navigating screen, technology, how to use it as your friend and not have it take over life. When it comes to having teens and just looking at the way that, teens are communicating even more now, I just think this is such an important conversation. There's some really sad stories out there of families that are dealing with the after effects of children having some, whether it be cyberbullying or just getting themselves in some really tough situations when it's come to social media and tech, and they haven't felt like they could go to mum or dad and have that conversation. If you can be forward facing and have the conversations to start with and set a really beautiful framework and foundation for your kids so that they know that they can come to mum and dad no matter what is going on. I don't know about you guys, but that's the kind of parent I want to be. That's the kind of relationship I want to have with my children as well as their friends, because maybe there's going to be something that comes up down the track where one of your friends' children they don't feel like they can go to their mum and dad, but they can come to you. So it's just having healthy conversations and being forward facing, having, being on the front foot when it comes to these kinds of things, rather than waiting for something to go wrong. So I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. Please pass this on to another amazing parent that you know would value this message and value the conversation that they'll be able to start from this topic inside this podcast. Until next time, stay empowered, and we look forward to catching you on a future episode.